They say Aruba is where couples go to fall in love all over again. If that's true, I guess my wife Vanessa fell into someone else's arms somewhere between the Mimosa Bar and Cabana number 7. We were 2 months out from our 10-year vow renewal, which, if I'm being honest, was her idea, her Pinterest board, her let's recapture the spark before 40 push. She'd been on this kick lately about aging gracefully, doing couples yoga, reconnecting with intention. I should have known that when someone starts using phrases like emotional bandwidth and ritual intimacy, what they really mean is, I'm already cheating and need this to look good on Instagram before it all blows up. But I went along with it. Because I'm a reasonable man. I don't throw accusations around lightly. And I sure as hell don't walk away from a paid-in full vacation with ocean views and open bars. Especially one I orchestrated. We landed in Aruba on a Wednesday afternoon, just in time for the humidity to punch us square in the throat as we stepped off the plane. Vanessa was glowing, tanned, toned, freshly waxed in places she hadn't bothered with since 2019, and unusually affectionate. She clung to my arm like we were on The Bachelor, giggling and whispering inside jokes we hadn't shared in years. It was almost enough to believe. Almost. That night, she insisted we hit the beach bar. She ordered a frozen mojito, kissed me long enough to raise eyebrows, then said she'd go back for seconds. You relax, babe, she purred. Let me treat you. Then she vanished into the string-like glow like a romance novel cover model with abs and an agenda. 15 minutes later, she came back with 2 drinks and a light sheen of sweat on her collarbone. Now, I don't claim to be a fitness guru, but the beach bar is a shaded, fan-cooled tent about 20 paces from our seat. She looked like she'd just run a marathon in a sauna. When I raised an eyebrow, she brushed it off with a laugh. Long line. Bartender was chatty. I nodded, smiled, filed it away. The next day was couples kayaking, which sounds romantic until you're the only one paddling while your wife takes in the view. That night, she pulled the same drink-fetching move, same sweat, same giddy look, same offhand line was insane. By the 3rd day, I stopped drinking the cocktails she brought me. Not because I thought she was drugging me. Please, Vanessa's not that subtle. It was because I wanted a reason to follow her. So the 4th time she excused herself for a round of surprise mixologist specials, I gave her a 3-minute head start, then wandered up to the beach bar like a guy too sunburned to sit still. And that's when I met Kurt, mid-50s, thinning blonde hair, mirrored sunglasses, and the sort of leathery skin that screams retired cop or Florida realtor. Kurt was the bartender. He gave me a big grin, started pouring what he assumed was my usual, and said, "You guys are wild, man. I haven't seen a couple use the private cabanas that much since spring break season. Respect." I blinked. Sorry, what? He laughed like it was an inside joke. Cabana 7? You and your wife? Power couple energy. Now, I'm not a jealous man, but I'm also not an idiot. So I leaned in, real casual, and said, "Remind me again, Cabana 7 is?" He pointed with his bar tongs. Far end, behind the palm split. Real private. You guys were there Thursday, Friday, and this morning. Vanessa's a firecracker, huh? I smiled. Tipped him $100. Asked if he could do me a favor and write down which days exactly we were there. He didn't even blink, just wrote it on a napkin like it was part of the drink order. Spoiler alert, I wasn't in Cabana 7. So now I had a napkin with dates and times, a tan I didn't want, and a marriage that had already expired 3 beach bars ago. But I didn't confront her. No. I smiled through our sunset couples massage. I kissed her forehead when she fell asleep early that night from too much wine. I even ordered her favorite breakfast the next morning and told her I couldn't wait for the renewal brunch. Because I needed one more day. Just one more. And she had no idea it would be her last one as my wife. There's something about being betrayed in paradise that hits differently. You'd think the palm trees would soften the blow. They don't. They just mock you while you sip $18 coffee and plot the surgical dissection of your marriage with the same steady hand you used to assemble IKEA furniture and act like it meant something. The morning of the renewal brunch started with sunshine, so bright it felt sarcastic. Vanessa was already up, lounging on the suite's balcony in nothing but a robe and a smug little smile, scrolling through her phone like she was checking stock prices. Probably texting Marco, or whatever his real name was. I called him Marco in my head because it sounded just exotic enough, just sleazy enough. Marco wore linen shirts unbuttoned to his navel. Marco had a Bluetooth headset and told women he wasn't emotionally available while unbuckling his sandals. Marco definitely wasn't her first. I knew that now. Vanessa and I had always been clean-cut. We did things by the book. Tax returns filed on time. Birthday dinners with both sets of parents. His and hers toothbrush holders. We were the couple that made it work. Until we didn't. You don't just stumble into a private cabana tryst. That's a bold choice. That's months of testing the waters. DMs, glances across conference rooms. Funny memes. I could see it all playing out like a script. Vanessa would giggle at something dumb, lower her voice when I walked into the room, lock her phone screen so fast it made a noise. The clues had been there, but I hadn't wanted to look. Now I was staring them down with clarity so sharp it could slice through granite. She walked back inside, all cheery and glowing, and climbed onto my lap like a teenager with a crush. You excited for the brunch, babe? I heard the pastry chef is from New York. I wrapped my arm around her waist and smiled like a man who didn't just tip the front desk concierge to slip an envelope into her suitcase while she wasn't looking. I can't wait, I said. She leaned in, kissed me on the cheek. You're being so sweet this trip. Well, I said, I figured this might be our last vacation for a while. Gotta make it count. She giggled. Why's that? Oh, you know, life. Changes. Responsibilities. Surprises. The envelope I had the concierge slip into her suitcase. Inside was a copy of the notarized annulment papers, dated and ready. Signed by yours truly. With attached documentation showing my removal of her name from our joint accounts. All of it timed, all of it legal, all of it irreversible by the time she touched U.S. soil. That wasn't the only thing I'd done. You see, while she'd been giggling her way through her tropical affair, I'd been quietly rerouting our entire financial portfolio. All of it. The savings account her parents helped us open when we got married, transferred into a revocable trust, controlled by me. The condo we owned in both our names, transferred legally and surgically into mine alone through a shell LLC I'd opened 6 months ago as a retirement investment strategy. She signed the paperwork without reading it, probably while half watching HGTV. All of that groundwork paid off in one glorious crescendo, and the orchestra was just tuning up. We got dressed for the brunch. She in this flowing white sundress she'd saved for the occasion, hair curled, lips glossed, her perfume just strong enough to make me nauseous. I wore a pale blue linen shirt, no tie, crisp khakis. Looked like the picture of forgiveness, of a man who found peace. The renewal brunch was staged like a wedding reception, only tackier. There were pink tablecloths, matching place cards, a buffet of miniature food no one asked for, and one poor local violinist sweating through Pachelbel's canon on repeat. The whole thing was filmed by the resort's marketing crew for their Candid Guest Experience campaign. I knew that, of course. I'd made sure they'd be rolling. Vanessa grabbed my hand as we sat down, eyes sparkling like she actually believed this would be the fairy tale ending. She leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for being patient with me this year. I know I've been distant, but this trip has really made me see what matters." Oh, the irony. The host called for a few volunteer couples to say a few words. One guy toasted his wife of 20 years and cried halfway through. Another couple awkwardly tried to make a joke about sharing bathroom space. And then it was our turn. Vanessa gasped when they said our names. "Did you sign us up?" she whispered. I smiled. Of course. I stood, tapped my champagne glass, waited for the camera crew to adjust their lens. The violinist paused mid-measure. "Hi everyone," I said. "I'm Eli. This is my wife Vanessa. We've been together for 10 years. Married for 8. Renewing our vows today." Vanessa beamed. I could feel her grip my hand tighter. I let that moment hang. Let the camera zoom in. I just wanted to say, I continued, raising my glass, that I've learned something really important this week. Something that changed my life. And I'd like to toast to that. A few people murmured appreciatively. Vanessa looked at me, confused, but smiling. "To my beautiful wife," I said, locking eyes with her. "May your next marriage last longer than the 14 minutes you spent in Cabana 7 with a stranger named Marco." The room went dead silent. I smiled. "Oh, and Vanessa," I added, "check your return ticket. You're flying home, coach. Alone. My seat's already upgraded, just like my life." There was a beat. Then the laughter started. Not at me, at her. One of the resort staff actually clapped. I handed her a manila envelope. "These are annulment papers. Surprise. Vanessa stared at me, jaw slack, hands trembling, frozen in place. Her mascara started to run, finally something real. She opened the envelope with shaking fingers and began to read as the violinist awkwardly resumed playing. And then the best part. One of the camera crew leaned over to another and said, not quietly, "Dude, this is going viral." They were right. The resort eventually used a clip from that brunch, me raising the glass, her face frozen mid-shock, in their real reactions montage on YouTube. Over 12 million views in the first week. I didn't ask for royalties. The moment was enough. As I walked out of that brunch hall, alone but 200 pounds lighter emotionally, I took a deep breath. Aruba's breeze hit different when you knew you were about to be free. Free from her. Free from the lies. And free to enjoy the rest of the trip, now that the trash had taken itself out. You'd think handing your wife annulment papers in front of a live camera crew at a luxury resort brunch would feel like the final scene. You know, roll credits, dramatic music, maybe a slow zoom on her shocked face as I walk off into the Aruban sunshine like some heartbroken anti-hero turned legend. But no, because even in humiliation, Vanessa had to make things harder than they needed to be. That's the thing with people like her. They're not wired for accountability. It's not in the DNA. Shame doesn't stick to them the way it does to the rest of us. It slides right off, gets rationalized away with phrases like, "You don't understand what I was going through," or "It didn't mean anything." Spoiler, it always means something. The walk back to the suite was a quiet one. Not because I had anything left to say, but because she didn't follow. That shocked statue routine only lasted until she got a whiff of the attention. Once she realized half the room was filming her with their phones, and the other half whispering her name, she bolted. I knew where she'd go. Not home. Not even to the front desk. Vanessa went straight to Cabana 7. There's something poetic about that. By the time I made it back to the room, she'd already trashed the place. Not in a dramatic, flip-the-table kind of way. No, she was too trained for that. Too used to looking presentable even while her life imploded. She'd pulled her suitcase out, open on the bed like a crime scene, half her wardrobe spilling over the sides. The toiletries were scattered across the bathroom counter. Her dress, the one she wore to the brunch, was in a crumpled heap by the door like it had committed the crime, not her. She looked up when I entered. Not crying, not angry, just that hollow-eyed expression women use when they want to appear composed, but they're dying to scream. "You blindsided me," she said, voice low and sharp. "No," I said, walking past her. "Marco did." She scoffed. "You don't even know what happened." "I know enough. 3 dates and times. A bartender with a good memory. You ever think maybe don't hook up with someone within view of a GoPro rental shack?" She stood there, arms crossed over her chest like she was still the one in control. Like the old Vanessa who could steamroll a conversation with 3 syllables and a dead stare was going to make a comeback tour. "You planned this whole thing," she said finally. "You flew me out here just to humiliate me." "No," I said again, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I flew you out here to make sure I could watch you unravel somewhere with good food, fast Wi-Fi, and no shared jurisdiction." She blinked, thrown off. "That's right," I added. "I didn't just annul the marriage, Vanessa. I made sure you walked away with nothing." "You can't do that," she hissed. "Already did." She lunged toward her suitcase, pulled out the envelope, and started flipping through the documents like she could undo a trap with enough righteous speed. You moved the condo into a trust? Are you kidding me? You liquidated the accounts? You had me sign things without telling me what they were." I stood. That's rich coming from someone who just spent 3 days sweating her way through beach intimacy while calling it me time. You think I didn't notice? You think I couldn't smell guilt coming off you like coconut oil and shame? She didn't respond. Because she couldn't. And because she knew the best part was yet to come. "Oh, and before I forget," I said, pulling out my phone and flipping it around so she could see the screen, "here's your return flight. See that little blue seat icon? Back of the plane, middle seat, right next to the bathrooms." "You're unbelievable," she spat. "No, Vanessa," I said, feeling that calm satisfaction settle in again. "I'm just free." And I was. Truly. Because while she'd been sleeping with her Marco, I'd been meeting with lawyers. Friendly ones. Quiet ones. The kind who specialize in asset shielding, marital exit strategy, and pre-annulment financial restructuring. The kind you pay up front to keep your name off their client list until the paperwork's already filed. I hadn't just planned a romantic getaway. I'd built a trap with beachfront access and an open bar. It wasn't easy. I'll admit that. There were nights I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe next to me, wondering if I was just paranoid. If I was the problem. If she was going through something I didn't understand, and this was all just a phase. But then I'd remember the giggles. The convenient silences. The way she'd started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. Guilt makes people stupid. And she had guilt pouring out of her pores like cheap sunscreen. And yet, here's the kicker. Despite everything, despite the evidence, the toast, the viral moment, and the fact that she was now legally homeless and broke, she still tried to spin it. As I packed my things, she sat on the corner of the bed and said, "We could have worked through this, Eli." I was lost, but I was trying. I thought this trip was going to help us. I zipped my suitcase. Funny, I thought this trip was going to help me too. She stood. "You really want to throw away 10 years? I paused, looked her dead in the eye. "You threw it away the minute you thought I wouldn't notice." That shut her up. I left the room without another word, walked straight down to the front desk, and turned in my key with a smile. The clerk, a cheerful woman with a lanyard full of pins and a badge that said Carly, asked me if I enjoyed my stay. "Best vacation I've ever had," I said. "Great food. Even better closure." She laughed, clearly confused. "Well, we hope you'll come back and bring your wife." I nodded once. "Next time, I'll be bringing someone better." As I walked out into the sun, I saw a cluster of staff huddled around a tablet. One of them pointed at the screen, grinning. "That's the guy," one of them said. Guessed the brunch footage had made its rounds. I wasn't mad. In fact, I hoped it hit 1 million views before my flight home. I hoped Vanessa's little betrayal became the cautionary tale of the season. Because if I've learned anything from this mess, it's that people like her thrive in secrecy. Exposure is the only disinfectant. And I was done living in the dark. My phone buzzed. It was my buddy Grant texting a single word, "Legend." I smiled. Let Vanessa spin her little narrative. Let her post cryptic quotes about betrayal and healing. Let her beg her sister for a couch to crash on and act like I was the one who overreacted. None of it mattered. Because while she was busy planning her next lie, I was already 2 steps ahead. Boarding pass in one hand, freedom in the other. Coach seat or not. She'd have all the time in the world to think about what she lost. And me? I still had 4 days of vacation left. Alone. And for the first time in years, I couldn't wait. People always assume the hardest part of ending a marriage is the loneliness that follows. The echo of empty rooms, the way dinner for one feels like a failure on a plate, the cold side of the bed suddenly so obvious it taunts you. That's not true. The hardest part? It's pretending, for the sake of your own dignity, that you're not enjoying the silence. I spent the next 4 days in Aruba doing exactly what Vanessa thought she wanted. I reconnected with myself. Ate breakfast without fake laughter. Slept in without obligation. Drank too much bourbon poolside, without pretending I wanted to do couples paddleboarding afterward. It was the most peace I'd felt in years. But peace has a cost. Because while I was perfecting the art of relaxation, Vanessa's little bombshell at brunch was detonating across the internet in real time. The resort's video editors worked fast. Within 48 hours, their YouTube page had a shiny new promotional clip called Unforgettable Reactions, Love, Surprise, and Renewal. At the 42-second mark, there I was, raising my champagne glass with that same calm smile I'd practiced in the mirror, and then, boom, the toast. You couldn't script it better. By the end of day 3, it had over 6 million views. I didn't post it. I didn't need to. Social media took care of that. Reddit had threads analyzing my tone like it was Shakespeare. TikTokers were duetting my speech with reactions ranging from shocked silence to standing ovations. Someone on Twitter made a meme of Vanessa's stunned expression with the caption, "When you realize cabana confessions don't stay private." And just like that, the story wasn't ours anymore. It belonged to the algorithm. It was poetic. But Vanessa? She wasn't having a poetic week. While I sipped a cocktail with a name I couldn't pronounce and watched the sunset from a hammock, she was dealing with the consequences of being the main character for the wrong reasons. The moment I landed back in the States, first class, naturally, I had a dozen unread voicemails waiting. 2 from Vanessa. One sobbing, the other furious. 5 from her sister, alternating between, "How could you do this to her?" Okay, but what exactly happened in Cabana 7? 2 from her mother, who once called me reliable to a fault, asking if we could talk. I blocked the number. Reliable doesn't mean doormat. But the one that stuck with me came from Grant, my oldest friend, my best man, and someone who had called it back when Vanessa started working late, twice a week. His message was short. You did it. Cold. Clean. Biblical. Proud of you. Cold. Clean. Biblical. 3 words I never thought would describe the best moment of my adult life. I got back to my condo late that night. Everything was exactly how I left it. Immaculate. Quiet. The welcome mat still had the wine stain from when Vanessa spilled a bottle while yelling at DoorDash for messing up her hummus order last winter. I stepped inside, dropped my bag, and took a deep breath. Home. And then I changed the locks. Next morning, I went to my lawyer's office for the wrap-up meeting. Michael, a guy with the facial expression of a tax auditor and the moral flexibility of a Vegas magician, had made it all happen. Discreet, efficient, and most importantly, legal. He slid a folder across the desk. Everything's finalized. She signed. No contest. I raised an eyebrow. She actually signed it? Michael nodded, barely looking up. Her lawyer probably advised her not to push. Given the evidence. Meaning the brunch footage? Meaning the internet, he said dryly. We're past private now. She's a cautionary tale. I leaned back, exhaled. What about the assets? All clean. Trust is protected. Condos in the LLC. Your accounts are yours. She can't touch any of it. Not even the flight miles. That one made me smile. You see, about 3 weeks before the trip, Vanessa had insisted we upgrade our travel card. For the perks, she said. Spa credits, priority boarding, the works. I nodded. Let her swipe. Let her rack up the points. Then I transferred them all. When she flew home coach, middle seat, no bag check, and 0 perks. Those points were already booked on a future trip. Destination, private, scenic, and very much not with her. Michael closed the folder. That's it. You're a free man. Funny how a phrase like that can hit you in the chest. Free. Not because I wanted to be single. Not because I didn't believe in marriage anymore. But because I finally understood something. You don't win by staying in a fight that's already over. You win by walking away with your soul intact and letting the other person dig their own grave while you build something better. And Vanessa? She'd been digging for years. The fallout was as ugly as expected. She lost her job within a week. Her firm didn't want the attention. Apparently, clients don't like having their brand managers associated with viral adultery scandals. Her friends? Split down the middle. The ride or dies tried to defend her. He blindsided her. He was cruel. But those voices faded once the full story leaked. Once the timestamps, the receipts, and, yes, the bartender's little napkin note made their rounds. Turns out betrayal doesn't play well on TikTok. She moved back in with her parents. Tried posting a vague healing journey selfie a week later. The comments were brutal. She deleted it within the hour. And me? I didn't say a word. Not online. Not to friends. Not to her. I just lived. Worked. Ate. Slept. And somewhere in the silence, I started to breathe like a whole person again. But just when I thought the dust had settled, when I was 2 weeks deep into my new, drama-free life, I got the email. Subject line, from Vanessa. No caps. No emojis. Just that. I stared at it for a while before opening it. Eli, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, and I don't expect you to respond, but I just needed to say some things. I messed up. Obviously. I know that, and I'm not going to try to justify it. I made choices I can't undo. I hurt you. I betrayed what we had. I see that now. But what's harder than anything is realizing that you were the one person who always had my back, and I threw it away for something that didn't mean anything. Marco. He ghosted me the day we got back. He won't even respond to my texts. Turns out he was engaged. Figures, right? Anyway, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. Not for the cameras. Not for the internet. Just for you. I hope you're okay. You deserve to be. Vanessa. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Not because I didn't believe her, but because, for once, her apology wasn't about me. It was about her realizing what she lost. And by then, it was already too late. Way too late. Regret has a sound. It's not sobbing. It's not screaming. It's not a dramatic apology at the foot of your door in the pouring rain. No, that's movie stuff. In real life, regret is quiet. It shows up as a half-deleted voicemail, an email you open and delete twice, a notification from someone you blocked, trying to find a back door into your peace. Vanessa's regret started echoing long after Aruba, and I didn't hear it from her. I heard it from the people who used to stand behind her, swear by her, tell me to just give her space whenever she turned cold. The same ones who had gone mysteriously silent since the brunch. You see, humiliation has a half-life. It lingers. Vanessa's little beachfront disaster didn't just hit YouTube. It leaked into the ecosystem. Her job gone. Her apartment lease revoked. I was the co-signer. Her credit frozen until she could prove she wasn't trying to open 3 new cards during a financial investigation. And she wasn't. But her little Marco had apparently been more than just a beach fling. Turns out he was a short-term scam artist with long-term vision. And she was the perfect mark. The full story came out about a week after the video went viral. A woman from Florida, username at Tropic Survivor, posted a side-by-side of Marco, real name Miguel Salas, smiling in 2 different resort photos, both with different women. Same shirt, same charm, same pattern. The comments blew up. Other women came forward. He'd been island-hopping his way through emotionally neglected wives and girlfriends like a tan-con man in a romance novel nobody wanted to read. By the time Vanessa figured it out, she wasn't trending anymore. But I was. Cabana divorce guy became a nickname. And not just in the digital sense. The next time I ordered takeout, the girl behind the counter said, "Sorry, are you the?" And I nodded before she could finish. Her eyes lit up. Dude, that was legendary. Can I get a selfie? So yeah, I was famous now. But only for doing what any sane person would do. Catching a liar, staging the truth, and walking away with my head high and my assets higher. But the part that really stuck with me? The silence that followed. You'd expect her to fight, to rage, to scream at the unfairness of it all. But she didn't. She stayed quiet, almost suspiciously so. And that's when I started to feel the itch in my brain. Something wasn't adding up. Vanessa was dramatic. Vanessa couldn't let things go. Vanessa once spent 3 months icing out a coworker who used her mug by accident. And now she was just done? That didn't track. Then I remembered the envelope. Not the annulment paperwork. Not the trust documents. The one I hadn't opened. Back in Aruba, I had the concierge slip a second envelope into her suitcase. A decoy. Inside, just a note. For words, handwritten. I know about Chicago. I hadn't told her about that yet. Not officially. Not to her face. Because I wasn't 100% sure. But I had suspicions. See, 6 months before the trip, Vanessa had flown out for a conference in Chicago. One of those vague industry events where you never see photos, never hear names, and the receipts don't match the calendar. She came back tan. From Chicago. In February. Said it was indoor lighting. Right. I found a receipt tucked inside one of her boots the following week. Room service for 2. 2 steaks. Champagne. Chocolate fondue. In a hotel that wasn't the conference venue. I didn't confront her then. I wanted to be sure. So I waited. And that's where Chicago started gnawing at me again. If she thought I had proof, maybe she stayed silent to avoid further exposure. Maybe she thought there was more to come. And she'd be right. Because I had one card left. The post-nuptial clause. Vanessa had never read the fine print. We'd signed it a year after our wedding, when we were in a rough patch, and she wanted reassurance that if anything happened to me, she'd be taken care of. I agreed, on one condition. Infidelity voids claims. Full stop. She signed it in a rush, between bites of avocado toast, and checking her yoga schedule. My lawyer brought it up during our final meeting. Technically, you don't need it, Michael said, flipping through the folder. You've already blocked every asset avenue. But it's icing on the cake. No, I said, tapping the desk. It's leverage. In case she tries to rewrite the story. Because she would. Eventually. People like Vanessa don't vanish. They go underground. They collect sympathy, spin the narrative, wait for time to erode the facts. They feed on ambiguity. And I wasn't going to let that happen. So I did something I hadn't done since before Aruba. I picked up the phone. One call. One favor. One security contact I used to play poker with back in the day. Name's Ellis. Quiet guy. Professional. Knows how to check camera logs without setting off alarms. 12 hours later, I had what I needed. A still frame. Vanessa. Chicago hotel. Same shirt she wore in the photo she posted that weekend. Not in the conference venue. Standing in a hallway, kissing someone. Someone who wasn't Marco. Different guy. Mid-30s. Black coat. Hands on her waist like they were regulars. Timestamp, 11:42 p.m. February 9th. Right after Valentine's. Before our 8th anniversary. I stared at the image on my phone for a long time. Not out of heartbreak. Out of disgust. It wasn't about the number of times. It wasn't even about Marco. It was about the pattern. The entitlement. The quiet rot beneath the smiles. The way she made me feel crazy for suspecting, distant for questioning, ungrateful for noticing. And now? It was all laid bare. I didn't text her the photo. Didn't call. I sent it to her lawyer. With a copy of the postnup. 3 days later, her attorney called mine. She wanted to withdraw her claims of misconduct on your part. There hadn't been any, of course, but the withdrawal was legally significant. A silent concession. And still, not a single word from Vanessa. No texts. No emails. No attempts to explain. Only silence. But it wasn't peace. It was fear. Because I still had the video. I still had the emails. I still had the full, documented trail of betrayal from Chicago to Aruba and everything in between. I could have released it all. Could have buried her reputation with a 2-minute supercut. But I didn't. Why? Because silence was louder. And I was saving the last word for something bigger. Something permanent. Something final. But that would have to wait. Because I had one more thing to do. One last move. One final twist in the knife she thought she'd already removed. And when I made it, she'd know exactly who she was dealing with. And she'd never forget it. There's a moment in every good revenge story where the villain thinks the storm has passed. They hunker down, play victim, rewrite the narrative in their head until they actually believe it. The big dramatic fallout is over. Everyone's moved on. Maybe there's even a shot at redemption. That's when you strike. Not with a scream. With a whisper. And that's exactly what I was about to do. Vanessa had vanished from the public eye for about a month after the viral brunch incident. No social media updates. No tagged posts. No new yoga selfies or inspirational quotes about growth or healing. I could only imagine the therapist she'd cornered was hearing a very edited version of our breakup. But like all phoenixes forged in the fires of their own narcissism, she eventually re-emerged. Soft launch. New Instagram profile. New handle at ruthless. Header bio. Dizzy wellness truth starting over herb. Some storms come to clear your path. Well, wasn't that poetic? I clicked through her first 5 posts. All filtered to hell and curated like a lifestyle brand no one asked for. There was a staged shot of her walking barefoot on a pier. Another of her meditating in a field somewhere that was probably a public park. A third with some caption about reclaiming feminine power that felt plagiarized from a TED Talk. But what got my attention wasn't the fluff. It was the comment section. Dozens of messages. From followers. From strangers. From women. Empathy. Praise. Validation. You're so brave. What he did to you was cruel. Cheating happens. Public shaming shouldn't. You're rising above the hate, and that's beautiful. And just like that, Vanessa was building her comeback. Not through apologies. Not through ownership. But by pretending she was the victim. The woman who cheated. Lied. Manipulated. Gaslit. Used a fake beach honeymoon to sleep with someone named Marco in a glorified towel closet. She had rebranded. And it was working. Until I reminded her who she really was. It started with an email. Not from me. From someone she wouldn't expect. Subject, interview opportunity, your story, your truth. From senior editor at moderngrace.com. Modern Grace was a semi-popular digital mag for empowered women navigating life. Think Goop, but with fewer jade eggs and more crystal-infused divorce guides. The kind of place that would eat up Vanessa's whole wellness widow act. She replied within 30 minutes. Said she'd love to share her journey. Said her audience would benefit from hearing her truth. They scheduled a video interview for the following week. A pre-recorded segment. Questions sent ahead of time. Vanessa prepared. Probably memorized a speech. But what she didn't know, what she could never have known, was that I had pitched the story. That senior editor? My contact. Friend of a friend. A journalist who owed me a favor after I caught his ex-wife laundering money through a fake travel blog. Different story. Long one. Anyway, the interview happened. Vanessa sat there with her ring light, hair done like it hadn't seen wind in weeks, and told the world her version. I was in a dark place. He didn't communicate. I made mistakes, yes, but I was trapped emotionally. That brunch toast? That was abuse. She said the words. Clear as day. That was abuse. And that's when I dropped the curtain. The next morning, Modern Grace published the interview. But not just her segment. The full story. Side by side with her interview was part 2, a journalistic breakdown titled, From Brunch to Breakdown. What Really Happened in Aruba. It opened with a screenshot of the viral toast, the champagne, her frozen face, then the receipts, the time-stamped hotel footage from Chicago, the receipt for room service for 2, the napkin from the Aruba bartender listing cabana visits, the post-nup clause she signed, legally removing her claim to shared assets after infidelity, the annulment papers, her financial collapse, her employer's quiet statement confirming contract termination due to reputational risk, a blurred screenshot of Marco from 3 separate Instagram accounts, with 3 separate women, across 3 separate islands. Every paragraph backed up, every claim cited. And just for flavor, a quote from my attorney. Mr. Geller made every effort to address his separation privately. Only after a pattern of deception and a public attempt to rewrite history did he choose to respond with documentation. We believe transparency is healing. I didn't gloat. Didn't insert myself directly. No tell-all interviews. No sob story from me. Just the facts. Let the readers decide. The internet did what it does. Vanessa's Instagram was nuked in less than a day. Hundreds of comments. Most brutal. Some pitiful. Many sarcastic. Oh, so Cabana 7 was a safe space? Starting over with who? Miguel 2.0. Turns out the storm was the path. She deleted the profile by midnight. Her comeback tour. Cancelled. But here's the part that mattered most. She knew. She knew it was me. She knew I had waited. Calculated. Executed with a surgeon's precision. Not out of rage. Not out of bitterness. Out of justice. And that night, as I sat on my balcony, same condo, same wine glass, different weather, I got one final message. Blocked number. No name. Just a single line. You ruined me. I stared at the screen for a while. Then replied. No. You did. Blocked the number. Finished my wine. Smiled. Because that was it. That was the ending. Not a scream. Not a scene. Just a quiet, devastating truth finally settling into the bones of the person who tried to bury me. I didn't want her back. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. And when you get it, you don't even have to say, I told you so. You just let the silence do the talking. And it always, always does. Subscribe to the channel